Welcome to the ECC 2020 panel, Is SIKE Ready for Prime Time? The panel title is a little play on words from 1997 when ECC was starting to be commercially viable and a serious competitor to RSA. And RSA Security, the company, put up a website called ECC Central, Is ECC Ready for Prime Time? And they had commentary from several experts in the field, mostly on the side of RSA, explaining why they had doubts about ECC. So that's the reason for the title of this panel. Of course, in that war, we know who won that war. So now we're on to SIKE and post-quantum crypto versus the others. So I'll start with a brief introduction to the topic. Then I'll introduce the panel members, and then we'll start the discussions. As you know, SIKE is a follow-up to SIDH. It's a NIST Round 3 alternate candidate. And its features include that it's the only NIST post-quantum candidate based on isogenies with elliptic curves, and it has small public keys and small ciphertext sizes. Some of this rationale for including, however, as a alternate candidate. They mentioned that the confidence and the hardness of the supersingular isogeny Diffie-Hellman problem would continue to benefit from more study. The main drawbacks of SIKE are its performance. More research is needed on side channel protection. Further research on isogeny-based cryptography is needed, but it's a strong candidate for future standardization with continued improvements. So some of the issues we can discuss today are first the classical security. The fundamental problem is finding paths in the isogeny graph. And this problem was first formulated by Charles Leder and Gorin in their paper on hash functions from 2005. But there's other complications with the problem as it relates to SIKE, for example, the torsion image points. Not much has been done in quantum security other than a concrete cost analysis of Townies and Grove research. So you might be curious about future prospects for improvements in quantum attacks. I was under the impression that a lot of work has been done on resistance to side channel attacks, but the NIST comments suggest that maybe more work is needed. I'm wondering what this might be. We know that SIKE suffers from bad performance, so what are the prospects for improving this in the future? It has limited functionality, so it's an interactive key agreement protocol, unlike, say, CSIDE, which is a non-interactive key agreement protocol. And of course, we would like functionality for other things beyond just key agreement, but using isogenies. What are the main use cases for SIKE, for example, TLS, given its performance, constraints, and limited functionality? Can it coexist with other quantum-safe schemes, including CSIDE, maybe BSIDE, and other proposals which are happening these days? And what are the prospects for NIST including SIKE as a standard? And if they don't, is there interest in standardizing SIKE in other standards forms? For example, European standards, Asian standards, and so on. And free feel to bring up other topics as well. So of course, you know that you can ask questions on the Zulip chat channel. All right, so move on to the introductions. The first panel member is David Zhao, my colleague at the University of Waterloo. David's also the chief cryptographer at Evolution Q. He's co-inventor with Luca Di Feo of SIDH and the principal submitter of SIKE. He's done a lot of work in implementing SIDH and SIKE on various platforms, together with his many colleagues. And I guess what really got him started in this particular topic is his discovery of a sub-exponential time quantum algorithm for computing isogenies between ordinary elliptic curves. Welcome, David. Our next panel member is Christoph Petit, who I think recently became professor at Université Libre de Brussels. And I believe I'm not supposed to say the English translation because there's a Flemish university with the same title in English. He's also senior lecturer at the University of Birmingham and a visiting research fellow at Oxford's Mathematical Institute. He's done a lot of work on analysis of isogeny-based cryptosystems, including various hardness assumptions and difficult work in the endomorphism ring. He was the first to point out the importance of public key validation in SIDH, and the first to study the impact or potential impact on security of SIDH and SIKE when you exploit the torsion point images. He's also made a lot of contributions to isogeny-based protocols, including a lot of work in signature schemes, and the most recent work seems quite exciting, and other schemes like verifiable delay functions. And our third panel member is Nick Sullivan, who's head of research at Cloudflare. He's also had the roles of head of cryptography and head of security engineering at Cloudflare. His research mandate at Cloudflare includes security and privacy, cryptography, internet measurement, low-level networking and operating systems, and emerging networking paradigms. Nick is very active in the applied research community as well. He chairs IETF's CFRG, which is their crypto forum research group, and also chairs IETF's messaging layer security. Cloudflare, as you might know, handles, I believe, 10 to 15% of the world's web traffic, and so they have a very strong interest in secure TLS. And Nick has experimented with large-scale deployments of hybrid key exchange with Curve 25519 and SIDH in TLS 1.3. So welcome everyone to the panel, and welcome to our panel members. So we'll begin by having the panel members speak for about 5 minutes on their views on whether SIKE is ready for prime time. So let's start with David.
Hi, thanks, Alfred. Well, I don't know if I'm going to go on for 5 minutes. What I have is pretty short to say. But well, on the one hand, I'm clearly biased, right? I mean, I'm the principal submitter of SIKE. I'm in many people's view, I'm the sort of driving force behind trying to get SIKE accepted and approved and generally used both in the academic research community and in industry. So do I think SIKE is ready for prime time? Well, yes, I do. I think that SIKE is very suitable for a lot of the applications and use cases that people have now. Right? And so maybe I'd start this discussion by sort of running through those points in my head, sort of the way that I view things, and how I what my perspective is. So maybe I'll start with the performance issue, right? So people say SIKE is slow, right? Well, yeah, it's slow, but slow in relation to what, right? If you're comparing against lattice-based schemes, yeah, SIKE is going to be slow. Pretty much everything is slow when you compare against lattice-based schemes, right? Because lattices are very fast. But in any sort of practical sense, SIKE is plenty fast enough for many of the applications that we need today, right? If you take any modern, Skylake or above CPU, and you run just the implementation that we submitted to NIST on that, it's like 5 milliseconds, right, on your standard PC, and it's not much slower on phones. Phones are sort of catching up to PCs in almost every way in terms of practical performance. In fact, Apple laptops are using ARM chips now, the exact same ARM chips that you might see in a phone or a tablet. So in many of the platforms that we use today, it's plenty fast enough. Where you do see an issue, this is one of the things that I've encountered in the course of talking to people and companies that might be interested in deploying SIKE. So where you do see issues are, first of all, in the case of something like server farms, where one server might have to, do as many millions of these key exchanges in an hour as you can possibly do, then yes, you would like it to be faster for that particular scenario. Or the other situation where you might desire some performance is on, really low-end devices. Well, I don't know if I should overstate it. The kinds of device like IoT devices, very limited. Performance capability, smart cards or things like that. We might not be able to run SIDH or SIKE on sensor networks or something like that. And so, if you need post-quantum cryptography on those platforms, then certainly there are better fits. But overall, for a lot of situations, SIKE has acceptable performance and it has really good key size. And key size is often also important. Sometimes when you even just when you want to copy and paste a public key or something like that, it's much easier when the public key is a few hundred bytes long instead of thousands or more bytes. So that's one situation where SIKE, I think, is very much ready. When you have situations or protocols, protocols with limited bandwidth, right? something that comes to mind, I don't know, DNSSEC or something like that, right? Although SIKE isn't, a great fit for authentication, purposes, but that kind of thing is where SIKE and in general isogeny-based protocols really seem to shine. I'm really looking forward to newer authentication schemes such as SKI-sign as applied to authentication scenarios such as blockchain, where size really does matter. I think that really has not been explored very much in our research communities. So those are some of the places where I think SIKE is and isogeny-based protocols in general are very much ready for wider use. Regarding the security of SIKE, I think that's one important point is make sure is communicated amidst all of this noise is that the track record of SIKE is not long by cryptography standards because it was only invented 10 years ago, but it is very strong. It is very sound by any reasonable measure. There have been some attacks, as Alfred mentioned, exploiting torsion point images to break unvalidated public keys or something like that. But in terms of the core strength of the protocol, there hasn't been any week of the attack cost pretty much since SIKE was invented. And I think that's something that I know that as soon as I say this, there's going to be some new imprint showing up tomorrow, cataloging some sort of devastating break against SIKE or something like that. So I'll take that chance. But for now, I think history has been very favorable to SIKE in terms of security. So, is it ready? Yeah, I think it is. Is there more work to be done? Yes, absolutely, there's work to be done. We can always try to make it run faster. We can try to make it more like side channel resistant, as Alfred mentioned. I'm sure we can talk about all of these things with time, but I don't want to spend all of the time talking about these things now. So I think I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yep. Thanks, David. Christoph, is SIKE ready for prime time?
Yeah, well, good question. Well, first of all, I should say SIKE is a great algorithm. I really like it, and more generally, the area is very interesting, and it really deserves more study. Now, in terms of whether we should already deploy this, well, as David said, there are different considerations, mostly efficiency, security. I would tend to agree with David that there would be a lot of use case for SIKE in terms of efficiency. From what I understand, the overhead for ECC plus SIKE is not so big compared to ECC only. Maybe Nick can say a bit more about that. I believe we're probably looking at some kind of hybrids deployment of pre-quantum, well, ECC and post-quantum crypto at first. So I think this is important. So yeah, in terms of efficiency, certainly. In terms of security, well, SIKE, I mean, ISO-based crypto, first of all, there are some very strong problems there. I mean, at least there are problems that have been considered for a while. Like if you think of supersymmetric curves, computing the anamorphism ring of a supersymmetric curve, that's a problem that has been looked at least since David Cole in 96 in his thesis. And those are problems that are of independent interest, right? They're not just cooked up to kind of prove the security of some crypto systems. So they're really problems of interest to a wider community and that have been along for a while. So I think that's a very good feature in terms of security. And as David pointed out, there hasn't been much progress on those problems. Essentially, if you look at supersymmetric curves, computing the anamorphism ring is just as hard as it used to be 20 years ago. So that's good. Now, if we focus on SIKE, well, SIKE is not quite based on that problem. I mean, of course, if this problem gets broken, SIKE gets broken as well, but the other way around isn't true, or at least not known to be true. And yes, there are certain issues. Some of them have led to some kind of attacks on variants. SIKE has not been affected so far, but SIDH variants have been attacked. So, I mean, among those specificities, well, the curves are a bit too close with respect to what you'd like for random curves to be. You're using very special primes, like the primes that you typically don't want to use in crypto. In SIKE, well, those are the ones we want to use. Nobody has found an attack against a way to exploit that, but we never know. And then, yes, there's this issue of torsion point attacks. And, well, I mean, there are two ways to look at them. So far, they haven't affected SIKE or even the parameters as suggested by SIDH. So the best attacks are still like this kind of trivial middle or Vanus code winner attack that target the general problem. On the other hand, the latest version of attacks, of torsion point attacks, get as efficient as that. So one could look at this as saying, well, people have tried very hard and failed, so torsion point attacks won't apply to SIKE. But we just at the boundary. I mean, our best torsion point attacks is just as efficient as those trivial attacks. So we could also think that maybe the next step is going to affect SIKE parameters as well. And in fact, the current state of the art does affect B-side that Alfred mentioned. So, I mean, there's a risk assessment here to be made. My personal take is that there's a substantial risk that parameters have to be adapted in the next few years as a result of improved attacks, maybe using torsion points or others. And that should be factored into the decision for standardization or deployment. But well, it's definitely worth studying further. And even if those attacks do end up breaking somehow, it doesn't mean that SIKE is dead either, right? I mean, we've been using discrete log and factoring that do suffer very substantial attacks, and yet we're using them. We just increase the parameters.
Thank you, Christoph. Nick, is SIKE ready for prime time?
It's a really good question. I would love for SIKE to be ready for prime time. I think it's a really attractive algorithm for a number of reasons. I think number theory is a really sound foundation for cryptography, and it has been for decades. But if you want to tackle the question of is SIKE ready, there's many different things you have to consider. First is the security aspect. Is this algorithm secure? Break it. The usability and developer safety aspect. Is this a algorithm that can plug into existing locations? Is it misuse resistant? Is there well-established patterns for how to use it safely? Is it suitable for applications? So one area that I've been looking at is the internet application. So the internet itself is very decentralized and very standards driven. Is this new algorithm fit for that environment? Are there other environments and applications that are not as federated, such as it's been mentioned here, blockchains, IoT? Are there places where it could be suitable, not pure internet applications? And then the last point to consider is, well, what are the comparative merit of this versus other constructions? And I think I'm well suited on many, but not all of these points. So when it comes to security, it's reasonably well understood that from a side channel resistance point of view, has some strong qualities and can be this can be improved, but it's relatively strong in this area. From a mathematical point of view, as David mentioned, it's a relatively new algorithm and it's an active area of publishing. And generally, cryptographers should be conservative in this area. So having a short history isn't the greatest sign, but the evidence seems to point that it's relatively strong mathematically. I'm not a cryptanalyst myself, so I'm a practitioner, so I'll leave these to the experts. And so in terms of suitability for applications, if we think about the internet, we generally think about TLS. This is the protocol that encrypts the web. It's got the lock icon on the browsers. So when people think about internet and internet encryption, TLS is really what they're thinking. There are other protocols like IPsec, SSH, etc. TLS is the one. TLS is currently on version 1.3, which I helped contribute to, and this is something that has used curve cryptography and RSA and Diffie-Hellman almost exclusively since the beginning, at least for the asymmetric aspects of it. So last year, Claire and Chrome put together an experiment in order to better understand what it would mean to replace the existing key agreement algorithms TLS with something post-quantum. And so you can pretty reasonably plug in a chem for the Diffie-Hellman type operation in TLS 1.3. And if you were to boil it down to a couple factors, ignoring, assuming full security and strength and all these sort of things, the factors that matter for internet deployments are key size, computational cost, and then other complexities of things like failed decapsulation or kind of funky things that are not guaranteed not to happen or not guaranteed to not happen. And so the experiment that we put together, we call it the ostrich and the turkey. So we effectively took the key agreement in TLS, which is most generally a Diffie-Hellman with 25519, and we turned it into a hybrid. So you would take X25519, do the key agreement, and then also take another chem to do a second agreement, and then kind of combine these together with a key derivation function. And the ostrich was the kind of short but plump one. So this is we called SIKE was the ostrich because the key size is a lot shorter than any of the other options, honestly. And that's the turkey. The turkey is sort of short and plump. The ostrich is long but lean, and so we used one of the lattice-based agreements, and effectively these two things were used to replace where we typically do Diffie-Hellman. So as this part of the experiment, we deployed this key agreement algorithm, which was just a new code point in TLS for 20 million web properties for Cloudflare, as well as a large selection of the beta users of the Chrome browser. So this was a really wide-scale, real-world deployment of both of these algorithms, and pretty highly optimized versions in C that were kind of shared by client and server built into boring SSL. And so what we found was that for the majority of connections was much faster in terms of in finishing the TLS connection with the lattice construction. The CPU cost was enough even on high-powered beefy machines that just actually doing the CPU computation for SIKE outweighed the latency cost of larger keys. But there was maybe a light at the end of the tunnel. There was a hint, though, that a small percentage of connections were actually much faster on SIKE, and this is something that still needs to be studied, but it suggests that for applications in which packet sizes and potentially packet sizes and packet reconstruction, if you have keys that extend beyond the size of the packet, it could be preferable to fit things into one packet with SIKE. So lossy networks, things like that. It seems like SIKE was preferable there, but the vast majority of connections was faster and more battery efficient as well, due to less CPU. So there's a lot more work going on in this area in TLS. There's the TLS project by Schwab and Wiggers, which is kind of how do we take chems as this is the target for all the NIST the NIST process for post-quantum, and how to plug that into TLS. TLS isn't built to work with chems, so that still needs to be developed. And to go from this experiment to something that actually widely deployed requires walking through this very long standards process. So IETF standards require running code, consensus. Bringing new cryptography into something like TLS requires going through the Crypto Forum Research Group, which is a sister organization to Internet Task Force's IETF. They're the ones who help write RFC. So if you've seen an RFC, TLS is an RFC. It's a document that defines a protocol. And so TLS 1.3 CFRG helps standardize curve 25519. And if something post-quantum is going to come through it, it likely has to go CFRG. CFRG. And this is one of my roles as co-chair of the CFRG. We've publicly stated that we are going to be waiting for more results on the NIST process to even studying the ECC for post-quantum chems. So as of today, is it ready for prime time? I would say no. It's probably years out for any post-quantum algorithm to be in TLS proper, because it's all well and good for one vendor on the server side and one vendor on the client side to implement it. And I think there's a lot of applications where it may happen, but for the internet at large requires a bigger kind of effort of standards for going through. With respect to what would be chosen by default, the experiment that we ran indicated that it's likely, at least in the short term, that the lattice approaches are going to be more performant and then most likely to be chosen by implementations, given many of these options. So prime time today, I would say no, unfortunately.
Thanks, Nick. So I'll go on to the Zulip questions. There's a lot of comments on emojis for this panel. I'll skip those comments. The first question is from Watson Ladd, who writes, SIKE performance started out as atrociously slow, and after much optimization is now slow. I should mention that Luca De Feo disagrees and says, with the atrociously phrase. The question really is, what, if any, are the applications where SIKE makes sense? I suppose beyond TLS, because we've heard a lot about TLS. Anyone?
Well, I don't know if TLS is the only application in town, right? There's lots of other protocols and things standardized even by IETF. I believe, like there's IPsec, for example, right? Does SIKE fit into that? I don't know. I've never seen anybody even try to study that question. SSH, something like that. I think that's an IETF proposed or draft standard. I don't know IETF terminology. I think there has been work in that regard. I believe Christian Patcan, I'm sorry if I got the name wrong, from Microsoft did do some preliminary work integrating OpenSSH with liboqs and all the things in liboqs, including SIKE. Is it ready for prime time? I mean, a lot depends on your definition, right? Like, as Nick said, even the lattice-based schemes are, years away from, the kind of group effort that we're going to need for standardization, widespread deployment, and, making sure that everybody understands how to use this safely and in what cases it can be used. So if you're going to take that definition, then probably no post-quantum scheme right now is ready for prime time. Are lattices closer than SIKE? Yeah, I've never disputed that, right? Sort of the approach that that we've taken throughout the NIST process is that the performance penalty will become less of an issue over time as computers get faster and as algorithms get better. So that's where I stand, and whatever comes in the future in terms of performance improvements, we have some idea of what those are going to be. I don't want to try to predict exactly what they will be. Whatever comes. But I'm fairly sure that the nature of computing progress is that things always get faster and attacks always get better, and both of those factors are going to, over time, decrease the relative advantages of lattices over SIKE. If you're asking whether SIKE is ready for prime time right now, in some cases it is. That was my answer. I can.
Anyone else? Oh, maybe Nick, since you chair the secure messaging group at IETF, is there any interest in that group for any kind of post-quantum crypto for things like Signal, which uses ETH and you need maybe a drop-in replacement for ETH?
Yeah, so part of the work that happened in the MLS working group, so the MLS is messaging layer security. It's a group that's trying to establish a set of protocols for secure messaging with all of the modern security approaches like forward secrecy, post-compromise security, and something that actually scales beyond small groups that you would have. So
Nick froze at my end. Can the others hear him? No.
It's frozen, yeah.
Oh, he's frozen.
It's frozen.
Anyone else? Christoph, do you want to comment on the question of
well, I guess David and Nick are more qualified than I am to comment on applications, but I guess we should look at applications where we need where small keys matter, because that's really a strong point for SIKE.
Okay, so we'll wait for Nick to get back. So we'll continue with another question. Boris Futsa and also Nikita Snetkov are asking if SIKE's ready for prime time, what about signature schemes? So, what's the state of the art and the prospects for applied or somewhat applicable isogeny-based signature schemes? I guess Chris will be the best to go first for that question.
Yeah, I can answer to that. I think the situation is a bit similar, where efficiency is getting okay. I don't have the exact figure in mind. Probably it's not as good as SIKE though. Efficiency security is more an open question so far. So ski sign is great. I mean, no dispute of that in terms of efficiency and improvement compared to others. But we do rely on some ad hoc assumption there, and we did try to break it. But who knows? Maybe next year somebody would come with a clever attack that contradict those assumptions. So we need a lot of work to look at that as well.
David, what do you think the prospects are? Because we don't need a signature scheme right away, obviously. We can wait longer for signature schemes, but the prospects for improving efficiency and getting more confidence and security in the next 5 years, let's say.
I think signature schemes are going to be one of the, and I've said this before, I think they're going to be one of the next big areas of research in the isogeny topic. Where signatures stand right now is, well, Christoph said the performance is not much worse than SIKE. I think that statement would depend on what you mean by performance, right? Like isogeny signatures have lots and lots of like tunable parameters that you can adjust, right? Depending on how you have some like, I don't know, Fiat-Shamir transformation, how many times are you going to do it, and so on. Those kinds of things, or even like something like fish, right? You can optimize for signature size alone. You can optimize for key size plus signature size. All of these are going to have different performance characteristics. You can optimize for speed for performance, right? So depending on how you do that, it's the answer is going to differ. I think that the situation right now for a lot of the signature schemes is that, for example, you can get like really, really good key size and signature size, like ski sign, for example, some order of 100, 200 bytes for key sizes and signature sizes, right? That's really good by post-quantum standards. But then the signature generation process is quite slow, right? It takes like 30 seconds or more to generate a signature. Verification is quite fast, right? So depending on what exactly you mean by performance, it can be fast, it can be slow. I think there are lots of, once you have a quantum computer and you need to be forced to do something post-quantum, there are going to be a lot of situations where small keys and small signatures are really, really attractive, like even more so than the situation for key exchange, right? Because just as an example, in key exchange, you rarely have to type in a key yourself. Right, signatures. Sometimes you actually have to type in a signature on your own. This is public knowledge, and not betraying any confidential company secrets here. But for example, product keys for authenticating copies of software programs have in the past been known to use signatures that the user has to type in. Those have to be small, or else things are going to be that, right? Blockchain needs small signatures, or else the size of the blockchain will become untenable. So things like that. So I think there is a lot of promise there. The difficulty there is that until people are like basically forced to use post-quantum authentication, I don't think they're going to. Until we get a quantum computer, it's going to be harder to make that case.
Thanks. I get the sense that researchers are quite excited about SIKE sign, the prospects of improving it over the next few months, I imagine. Nick's back. Great.
Yeah, sorry, I dropped out.
Yeah, so maybe you can continue your thoughts on post-quantum crypto and secure messaging.
Yeah, I think there's two interesting aspects with MLS and post-quantum that were considered in the design. First, it was built with chems in mind, so that the original design of MLS was all about Diffie-Hellman, and since almost none of the post-quantum algorithms, except for some isogeny ones, have a Diffie-Hellman type structure, it made sense to restructure it in terms of chems. So MLS is designed to be forwards ready for plugging in different chems. The other aspect is that the IETF kind of realized at this point that there wasn't any standardization of public key encryption. So hybrid public key encryption as a single step using the chem. So one outcome of MLS was a new design was brought to CFRG for something called HPKE, which is hybrid public key encryption. And it allows a number of different modes similar to AEAD symmetric encryption. And how that as a basic building block for protocols going forward is going to make it a lot easier for different protocols to adopt something that is post-quantum going forward.
Thank you. So let's see. Luca Di Feo and Craig Costello were very intrigued by Christoph's comments on torsion and attack on B side.
Yeah, well, I saw that Chloe has already answered that mostly. So we had a paper with Chloe, Peter Kotash, Kate Stanger, Lawrence Pani, and Victoria De Crème. So in that paper, in the version that is public, we explicitly say that we adjusted the margin for B side, and we don't really break it. But in the same version, if you look at the figure, you actually see that we do have a quantum attack on B side. So in the new version that should come out public very soon, we didn't change anything in the technical work. We just changed that comment, and in fact, yes, we do target B side. And for SIDH, as I said, we still just at the same level. I mean, we need roughly. I mean, because there are lots of approximations there, but roughly the attack using torsion points needs just the same complexity as the attack using Werner Schroeder or meet in the middle.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on this? No. Okay. Dan Bernstein has a question related to the signature size in post-quantum schemes. So if the signature size is an issue and the key size, why not use the hash of the key and then use the key in the signature as a signature itself? That at least reduces the size of the key, which
I suppose he's talking because I was the one who brought this up. Yeah. I think most of the situations where you care about key size, you would also care about signature size. I'm just trying to sort of think through this. Like, for example, if you're typing in a product key, the key is the product key, despite being called a key, is actually a signature. It's the signature being generated by the master corporation that owns the private key. And so hashing the public key does not actually reduce the signature size in that case. Well, in fact, it increases it. So it wouldn't work there. And then, likewise, in a situation like blockchain, I think you would care about both key size and signature size, right? Well, actually, blockchain does hash the public key. That's one of the steps that it takes to sort of make the public keys smaller in that case. And it also has the side effect of somewhat hiding the public keys in case, ECDSA, let's say, which Bitcoin uses, in case ECDSA gets broken, whether by quantum computers or otherwise, at least, wallets that haven't ever been used to transfer coins out would still be safe unless you inverted the hash function that's hiding the public key. So it is used. You can do that. But Bitcoin does it in such a way that it doesn't increase the signature size, because in the sort of Bitcoin setting, you don't give the public key at all until it's time to transfer your money out. So yes, it does work. But I don't think it works in as many situations as you would like, because purely trying to optimize for key size leads to larger signatures, which is usually also bad.
Thanks. I have a question for Nick. Since Cloudflare, I believe, somehow managed or handles 15% of the world's web traffic, which is really a mind-boggling amount. Do you see any demand for post-quantum crypto from customers? Because that could drive whether you use it or not, as customers from around the world could just have their own views on the importance of long-term security for web traffic. Can you say anything about this?
Yeah, I will say that customers are interested in the long-term story. There's not a strong demand for immediate deployment of post-quantum cryptography. And the reason for that is that we're still in the process of figuring out that is. And that's why we have this panel, this discussion, and the NIST process is still ongoing. But what customers are interested in is whether or not their service providers have a long-term roadmap that incorporates post-quantum security, because it's something that is definitely in the news, and it's something that folks are really concerned about. But in terms of, hey, should you implement something immediately? That's not an ask that we've had per se. Although I will say for internal traffic, you have a lot fewer restrictions. So it's not like you're communicating with browsers that are managed by a different organization. If you're talking server to server, this provides a pretty nice opportunity to test and play with and experiment with and use post-quantum cryptography much earlier than it would be on the public web. And so doing so is something that I think the users of a service like Cloudflare would appreciate as a company going above and beyond and looking ahead to these future technologies. But it's a requirement.
I suppose Cloudflare's interest would be in TLS in general web deployment. What about niche deployments, even of TLS? Have you, or maybe David, or in any of your company-related work, come across customers who want private implementations of TLS with post-quantum crypto, which could be more feasible than having the whole web do it?
I don't know that we've actually had anybody wanting to do that with TLS. We have had, in my work with Evolution Q, we have had companies approach us with requests to do private, not necessarily specifically TLS, but actually we've done work in the company setting. We've done work with post-quantum IPsec and things like that. So there is some demand for that. I don't know if it's huge right now. If it were huge, maybe our company would be a little bigger than it is. But there is some of that there. And then of course, SIKE itself is a collaboration of many, not only academic researchers, but also industry partners, including now Microsoft, who was on board and Amazon, who were both on board from the very beginning. Now we have IBM, but that's just because Luca moved there. I don't know that necessarily because IBM is strictly interested in post-quantum cryptography. But there is interest there from the corporate side. Whether or not I'm authorized to say publicly what that is, I don't believe I am. So I'm just unfortunately going to have to be vague here. But I have seen some expressions of interest.
Thanks.
Custom versions of TLS. Yeah, this isn't something that comes up on a day-to-day basis in my work, but at the IETF there is a working called LAKE, which is Lightweight Automated Key Exchange, and there's currently a bit of a debate going on as to what sort of protocol they would use for lightweight, say, IoT devices. Speaking of version of TLS, that needs to be much more compact. So one of the projects at the TLS working group at the IETF is called TLS, which is compact TLS. Effectively, what it does is it removes a bunch of the excess bits for framing things inside of TLS. And this is something that has interest. There's definitely organizations that are interested in making TLS as small as possible. And this is early but ongoing work. So there's interest in having TLS be as compact as possible.
Thank you. Tanya has a question for Nick. You mentioned that effort is needed to use chems instead of Diffie-Hellman. What would you like to have in a scheme besides not being broken by quantum computers? You get to set requirements for the whole ECC community to work on for the next one. A lot of
I'm not sure I can answer that.
Can I go?
I mean, what's coming out of NIST for chems and the requirements are pretty strong. I mean, it's reuse resistance is one main that leads to a bunch of issues if it doesn't exist. So what we've seen at TLS in different implementations is that either Diffie-Hellman key shares or public key, private keys or whatnot are reused in a way that enables of it. Chems are well suited for using the same public key more than once, and that's one main requirement that I would put on this.
I'd like to add something here. So if you look at the signal protocol and how it works, there's this like triple sort of Diffie-Hellman ratchet thing going on there, and sort of you look at that and you look at sort of what properties mathematically does that require, and eventually you get down to it and you find that one of the things that you would really like is a group. Right? You would really like to have a group sitting there so that you can do the group operations, which is what you need for this triple ratchet type of construction. And so if you want to talk about groups and post-quantum and things like that, I think there's probably only one game in town, and that would be SIKE, because there you have a group, albeit a group action, but you do have a group. You have like something to work with there. And even then, it doesn't like translate exactly. It's not sort of exactly totally straightforward to just throw together a 3-point ratchet using SIKE. But I think that is going to be closer than anything else post-quantum. You want with lattices you can get something like that, but you have a group, but you're gonna have like errors accumulating, and so you have to deal with that, right? SIKE, I might add, technically yes, it's a group, but we can't like evaluate it classically on like arbitrary group elements unless you do some like big computation like in CFISH to compute the group structure, right? So there is some work to be done both on the protocol side and also on the algorithmic side to make that work. But I think it's closer than anything else, well, except lattices if you're allowing errors or something like that.
Christoph, do you have any thoughts? I don't want to leave you out.
No, I will leave that to the other.
That's great. Craig Costello asks about SIKE channel attacks. I'll rephrase this question very broadly. So I was a bit surprised that NIST would mention that SIKE needed explicit work on SIKE channel attack resistance. Since from the beginning, people have been doing constant time implementations, and there's been several papers on using our experience from ECC resistance to SIKE. So generally, what needs to be done on SIKE channel attack resistance on SIKE? And Craig's question specifically was, could good timing protection be achieved by randomizing the coordinates of the kernel generator?
I'll take that question. Just last week, there was a paper that appeared in Transactions on Computers by Fan Zhang and 6 other authors on implementing a new SIKE channel attack on SIKE. right? So that this particular attack is a differential power analysis attack. Actually, they proposed it as a DPA attack, but they actually implemented it as a sort of electromagnetic radiation emanation attack. So that's how they implemented it. But they implemented it against the SIKE, NIST implementation, and they were able to recover the key on a sort of typical 32-bit ARM processor. And as Craig mentioned, that yes, they attacked the scalar multiplication. That was the step that they attacked to break the sort of NIST implementation that we submitted. And the countermeasure that they proposed was exactly point randomization. Right? So that's something that we might think about putting into future versions. I think so. These problems are from the point of view of all the pre-quantum ECC side channel attack theory that carries over to the SIKE setting. I think those are pretty well understood. It's just that somebody actually went out and did it to demonstrate that we can do it. After that, all the isogeny stuff, that stuff, as far as I know, there hasn't been sort of a lot of sort of results in terms of attacking that part directly. There have been some results, in the context of fault attacks, where you deliberately trigger faults in the computation, or you abort the computation early, or things like that. And here's a kernel point sitting here, right? Let's attack it that way. So yeah, there is some work. I don't think that necessarily. There hasn't been any progress on side channel attacks, or that this is saying there needs to be more research. I do agree there needs to be more research on this.
Yeah, maybe to reflect on that, I think a nice feature of SIKE that can maybe make standardization faster as well is that a lot of stuff is similar to elliptic curves. So we have learned a lot about how to implement elliptic curves securely, efficiently, etc. And a lot of algorithms can just be adapted here. So that can make everything faster, yeah.
Okay. So we need to have some discussion, some wars. This is a crypto panel. No crypto panel should be without some wars. So maybe the first is from Patrick Longa, who asks, what's your opinion on the security of SIKE versus lattice-based system? And I'll add even deployments, because Nick has experience with doing lattices and SIKE in TLS. The security and deployments, lattices versus SIKE.
Well, which lattice scheme, first of all? And there's so many parameters there. So I guess if you're very conservative and go for non-structured lattices and high parameters, you're very safe. And structured lattices have been around for a while as well, and there hasn't been a huge amount of attacks, but I think there's some worrisome results as well. Yeah, so it's everybody's guess.
Nick, can you comment on your lattice versus SIKE experience in your TLS experiments?
I mean, I think both are eminently implementable, and so it's not a really from in order to have both of these options be safe. Going into the details, implemented either, so I can't really comment on that as well. But as long as both conform to the same high-level API, relatively good shape. And with lattices, of course, this issue of the of potentially decapsulation that is ordinarily rare in many of the schemes. If it's less rare, that becomes a problem, and it could potentially be good. There's questions of, do you write explicit code to handle cases that are 2 to the negative 78 chance to test? I think that's a small wrinkle, not not a necessarily insurmountable one, because it's so rare that such a thing would happen. So that much to say on either one of these. I think they're both strong.
Okay, so speaking of wars, there's not enough lattice people here for a good debate, so let's try civil war. So judging by the comments in emojis, what do you think of SIKE versus Seaside? Security, deployment, functionality, standardization, whatever.
Start.
Ooh, David is ready to go. All right.
Ready to go. I think that SIKE and Seaside absolutely can coexist. I think that there's room for both. There's roles for both. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have always been publicly very supportive of Seaside, and I think it's a wonderful scheme. I think that so there's a lot going for it. I would like to see more work done in sort of research, standardization, deployment of both SIKE and Seaside. Maybe even, NIST has hinted that there's going to be, future rounds of the process where they will start considering, paraphrasing, new schemes that were not available in 2017 when the process started. Seaside is a prime candidate for that. Right? So, yes, I think that we should consider both. Each one has pros and cons, right? And we can go through these. That there's sort of lots of reasons why you might actually prefer SIKE. SIKE is faster than Seaside, right? For sure, right? Especially if you only need ephemeral, then you don't even need SIKE. You just need SIDH, right? And then so now that removes a whole layer of complexity away from SIKE, and now it's much faster than Seaside, right? So performance. Even though it's slow by lattice standards, if you thought SIKE was slow, you're not going to be happy with Seaside. Seaside is also slow, much slower, in fact, right? So performance is one thing. The subject of key size is something that I think is still up in the air right now, right? Seaside in the original paper claimed, Seaside 512 was NIST level 1. We've now seen later work by, for example, Chris Pikert at Eurocrypt that disputes that conclusion. Says that maybe we need more bits, and of course, depending on how many more bits we need, those keys might be bigger, and they might be bigger than what you would need for SIKE. We don't know. There's still some debate about that. If you need a group structure, right, like phone signal or something like that, there's no question in my view whatsoever that Seaside is going to be a better fit for a post-quantum signal. Just from a mathematical point of view, I don't know, like practically in terms of how big and how slow it'll be if you need like post-quantum security, taking into consideration, the recent work that I mentioned. I don't know. That stuff is still, under construction, so to speak. But just from the point of view of the mathematics, what you need in order to implement a post-quantum, triple Dibby Hellman ratchet, Seaside is going to be the thing to use. And then even like other things other than Seaside that you can bring into this conversation, like all the signature schemes, right? Fish, ski sign, and all of these things. There might even be some advantages there, right? Like, if you have a signature scheme like ski sign or even Galbraith Petit Silva, where the security assumption relies only on endomorphism rings, it doesn't require all the extra like baggage that SIKE has with torsion points and torsion point attacks. You have like arguably more security there, right? That may also be attractive, right? So I think there's lots of room in cryptography for all of these things. I would never, go out and say, everybody should use SIKE and bash Seaside. That's not what I do. I think that I very much want to encourage more activity in all of these areas. And if something were like obviously insecure, then yeah, I would say don't use that. But that's not the situation that we're in.
Okay, so David's playing peacemaker. Christoph, do you have anything to add?
I'm not gonna start a war either. David is right. They're good. They can definitely coexist depending on what you're looking for. In terms of security only, I would tend to think that Seaside is maybe more conservative design, but the parameters are not very well understood. where SIKE is maybe more original. But with respect to existing attacks, we know much more about it.
I can see Nick's name. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Would Cloudflare have any interest in the future in trying Seaside in TLS? Just because it's a nice fit into Diffie-Hellman.
It could be, yeah. Actually, Cloudflare has a cryptographic library in Go called Circle, CIRCL, and we have implementations both of SIKE and Seaside. We're exploring different applications of both. I totally agree with both of the other panelists that they have their place. Seaside has the nice property of, if you're using it in a Diffie-Hellman-esque scenario, you static key, so that opens up some interesting things. It's more group operation-like. With respect to TLS, it's smaller, right? So the advantages that you get from in space-constrained protocols that happen to have really large CPU, it's what those are in practice. It's very hard to say.
As I said, it's smaller depending on your view of recent sort of attacks against Seaside, or not attacks, but you know.
I guess, yes, yeah, depending on the parameterization and what you consider your security level.
Cost attacking Seaside.
Yeah, well, in any case, Seaside is and SIKE, well, and SIDH are both very nice, elegant protocols, and I'm not going to pick a favorite. They potentially have their own place. It's too bad that Seaside came out too late to be part of the NIST process.
All right, so I think we're at the end of our hour. So on behalf of the audience members, thanks to the panel members for the lively and engaging discussions. Thanks to the ECC 2020 organizers for putting these panels together. And special thanks to Tanya Longa for all her efforts in putting panels together, rounding up people on short notice, and dealing with all this complicated technology, which I'm terrified of. I may not have gotten to all the questions and discussions, so you're welcome to join the Wonder channel, I believe, right after this, we shut the session. Maybe Tanya can send me a reminder of how to join the Wonder channel. I haven't done it before, and maybe some others. But anyway, thanks very much for your participation, and see you on the Wonder channel.